Hi, welcome back to Keep It Dirty, a podcast where my guests share their life living functionally and sustainably, and the why behind their experiences navigating through our ever changing environment. I'm your host, Leslie Dowling. I'm a corporate speaker, sharing how one can jumpstart your path to increased revenue and productivity through restorative health techniques. And today it is my pleasure to welcome my guest, Bobby Wrigley. Bobby is the director of coffee at Backyard Beans Coffee. So it's a pleasure to have you today, Bobby. How are you?
I'm doing well, Leslie. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've been an avid drinker of backyard beans for many years. And I just had this epiphany one day that why can't I get people that I love to use their products to be on my show because it's so in line with sustainability and organic and just giving back to the community. And that's definitely my wheelhouse. And it looks like it's in your wheelhouse. So maybe you could share with the viewers and listeners how you ended up being the director of coffee at Backyard Beans and a little bit about your background.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and first of all, Leslie, I saw you giving us a shout out on Instagram when you were at the local Leaf, and we always appreciate that when our customers love our coffee and want to share with others where to find it and that you love the coffee because we put a lot of effort into sourcing really good quality specialty coffee and roasting it in small batches, roasting it well. That's my passion for really high quality. And yeah, how did I get here? Kind of a roundabout way, but I started working for Backyard Beans in 2015, and at that time it was a startup, pretty small and scrappy. Um, my boss, the founder, he had just quit his job to go full time, running Backyard Beans, and I was one of like two or three employees, but we were all very part time. And the reason why I started working at Backyard Beans was to learn how to roast. I had been really interested in coffee and really into brewing coffee, tasting all the different varieties that I could get my hands on from like all the best roasters around the US as well as like Scandinavian roasters back like in 2013. I was ordering coffee from like the world's best roasters at the time because coffee's gone through a very neat kind of like evolution of focusing on where this specific variety comes from, how it's processed, and roasting it to highlight like really unique flavors from the coffee farm itself, from the variety that the coffee is, and so forth. So the coffee industry is really developing in the last like 20 years in that direction, kind of highlighting the coffee farmer and where the coffee comes from. So um, in college, I was really interested, is like when I started getting interested in coffee and figured, well, I better learn how to brew it well, and I better learn how to develop my palate for it. Um, and ended up leading me into roasting, which fits really well for me because I'm really detail oriented and um, I love working on my feet all day, every day, and keeping active. So my job now is to oversee our roasting operations, but also to oversee our green sourcing. So green coffee is the what we call it before it's roasted, and then also to oversee our quality control with our products that are going out the door. So yeah, I've been with the company now for the last, what is that, 8 years, and it's been it's been fun. It's things have changed a lot as we've grown.
I know it's definitely an art for me when it comes to going to my destination to pick up backyard beans. And I'm always looking every season, you have a little bit of a different, different flavors. I love the packaging. It's so colorful.
Yeah,
And the way that you describe things, it was so well thought out. And even just when you pick up the bag, it's very soft to the touch. I mean, you have to think about all those sensory modes that are going. And and the way that it's sealed, and it lasts a long time. I close it up and I put it in my, I have a little container on my shelf, and I love doing the French press. That's my thing. Whole beans using French press, and I don't get a headache from your coffee. And I really enjoy, you know, all the coffees. But I'd love for you to maybe speak into, not only do you make your producers of coffee, but some of the nonprofit work that you do, community work. Uh, Maybe you could share a little bit about Warm Hearts,
Mhm.
which benefits the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia.
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for sharing your experience with our product. Like I said, things have changed a lot over the years, and we're a company that started with not like a lot of investment or capital, and so it's taken us years to kind of get where we're at today, to kind of keep building back into the business with investment. And our director of marketing, she's doing a great job with the design and everything you see. She's been with us for a long time as well, and yeah, our packaging, it just feels good in your hands. And one thing, I'll touch on your question here in a second, but just to stay on the packaging for a quick second, we
Yeah.
uh, about a year and a half ago, I think it was, we switched to the current packaging we have. And one of the big reasons why we did that was for the durability of the packaging in transportation, as well as keeping the beans fresh. Um, we've experimented with like compostable packaging, which is which is great for the environment, but the issue was the beans weren't staying fresh in the packaging. So we moved to a recyclable bag, and it's kind of the best middle ground for keeping the coffee fresh, but also being able to take that packaging and we can bring it into our cafes and we send that to recycling. Um, but yeah, we to touch on your question, each season, so coffee is seasonal, and we're always bringing in coffees from different countries and trying to keep the green coffee that we're roasting um, fresh flavors. So we're trying to keep our roasted product fresh and with the seasons. Most coffee growing areas, they most of them harvest once a year, and depending on where that country is and where their latitude and longitude, how close to the equator they are, it's going to affect when their harvest season is. And so I take that into account to try to source our seasonal blends based off of what's fresh and what's tasting really good. And so right now, I know you've been enjoying the family drama, and it's been a classic for us the last few years, and it's been a Central American coffee, and this year it's a Guatemalan coffee, and it's um, it's a single origin, but in a way it's a blend because it's from many small holder farmers in one community. All their coffees are blended together to make the lot that we're roasting. And it's from a region called Huehuetenango, which is home to some of the best specialty coffee in Guatemala. It's grown at like really high elevations and shade grown. So that coffee is out for really only like the next week because we have our next seasonal blend launching. And this, yeah, to touch on your question, this holiday season, we decided we wanted to do a benefit coffee to help give back to some cause. And the Warm Hearts coffee that we are selling as retail at our cafes and online, and we're also selling it as a brewed cold brew in cans. That really came about from our director of cold brew, TJ. He decided he wanted to kind of help spearhead this project. And when him and his wife had their child, their son, about a year and a half, no, it was a few years ago. I forget how old exactly he is, but he was a preemie baby, and they spent a number of weeks in the hospital at CHOP. And so TJ had the idea, let's donate all the proceeds of the sales of this coffee and help support CHOP. And yeah, that thread of us being a local business trying to give back to our community is something that has kind of run through our company the last number of years. And in 2020, that's when we really kind of started uh, focusing in on that. And back in those days, we were giving a lot of cold brew to local hospitals and supporting the frontline workers. And from that, we launched our Make a Difference Mondays in our cafes, where proceeds of sales every first Monday of the month are donated to a local charity organization. So this gives us an opportunity as a company to highlight the good work that people in our community are doing and bring the community together around our cafes. So around our coffee, around our baked goods, our food that we serve there, um, to make everyone feel like they're part of the community and get to understand what neat things are going on around us.
Yeah, and that's really what I guess being years in marketing and product development, I look at packaging, I look at placement on the shelves,
Hmm.
the way that it feels, all of that. It just draws you in and invites you. And I think the sense of community is excellent because I don't know if you ever heard of The Blue Zones by Michael Pollan, and it talks about communities all over the world where he visited, and the people that are very active and proactive with community and giving back live the longest.
Hmm.
And so I think really we need to get back to that, and it's always nice to see that because I always take it a step further in functional health. And I say, wow, that's so heartwarming warming to see that. And I see you also have something called Make a Difference Monday and Goods Donations. Maybe you could, is that something that's you're instilling rolling forward, or is it something new that you're doing?
Yeah, the Make a Difference Monday is an initiative in our cafes. So we have a cafe in Ambler, Pennsylvania, and in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. So if you're not from Pennsylvania, these are suburbs just north of Philadelphia. And our cafes were about uh, 20 minutes apart from each other, maybe a little bit longer with traffic. And so yeah, the Make a Difference Monday. I believe we started that initiative in 2020. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, that's where we're donating uh, part of our proceeds from the cafe sales on that given Monday of the month to a local charity or a local nonprofit. Yeah, and that's been really fun for the owners and for our marketing team and for the baristas at our cafes, just to be able to, as well as our customers, yeah, to feel like we're part of something special and yeah, like we're connecting with our community.
Yeah, I love that. And so when are you going to have a cafe in Wyomissing? we, we need you guys here,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
another suburb.
maybe I
So
hear you. We've thought about doing more cafes, but the last few years our focus has really been on production work, or
yeah,
wholesale, I should say. Um, so right now we don't have plans for more cafes. It's like a whole different business, and it's good,
yeah.
but it comes with its challenges. And just to hit on that real quick before we move on, like our wholesale and our roasting operation is where our part of our business's focus is nowadays, because we're collaborating with a lot of other brands, and we've launched a brand business for co-packing for a lot of other coffee brands. So we've built up our roasting operation as well as our cold brew packaging operation, to manufacture for a lot of other brands, and it's been fun for us and for my team in the warehouse to be able to get to collaborate and work with a lot of other people in the industry.
Wow. So how did you stumble on Backyard Beans? Are they friends of yours, or this is something with your background that you've been doing for a while, or this is all a new
Yeah,
adventure for
I
you?
I was working part-time at a cafe called Brigadoon Coffee House in Ottsville, Pennsylvania. It's just north of Doylestown. And I was like dreaming of opening my own cafe. And at the time, like I said, it was kind of like at a time when specialty coffee was really booming. And so this was in 2014. And we were trying to figure out at the time at Brigadoon how to serve cold brew on tap, like a nitro tap. And at the time, like not many people were doing that. So we were trying to figure out, all right, how do we keg cold brew? How do we pump it through a tap line and infuse it with nitrogen? And through some connections, I think it was my friend Jeremiah met Matt Adams, the founder of Backyard Beans, who had stopped by Brigadoon trying to sell us on his system that he had developed for cold brew kegs and a kegerator system. And so it was through that. I think I met him at Backyard Beans. We didn't know each other, didn't have any connections, and then we connected online, and he knew what my interest was and what direction I was trying to head in, and he needed somebody with a good coffee palate and somebody who could roast and help grow the business. So I started working
Wow,
for him then.
very interesting. Because I did some independent contract work, just lecturing on health and wellness, mind, body, spirit at Good Life Financial here in Reading, and they had this apparatus
Oh yeah.
that it was like. So is that Backyard Beans? Is that the same? I'm
It
wondering.
could have been. There's probably some other people out there selling kegs and tap systems, and there are for
Okay.
sure. But that's a big part of our business is um, kegging cold brew as well as canning it and selling it. So we sell. You'll see our cans on the shelf at Whole
Hmm.
Foods, at other local grocery stores, in our cafes.
Yeah.
And then our kegs are on tap at cafes. Also, some local grocery stores have kegerators like Kimberton. We
Yeah.
get our cold brew on tap and fill up a growler. Um, and yeah, at Wegmans, you can go pick up a bag in a box. So it's like a
Oh,
like a wine box, like bag in a box, little personal tap system of cold brew. So that's a product
I,
we sell at
I,
Wegmans.
yeah. I had a quick question. So I just experienced now. Obviously, when I have something that has a lot of chemicals in it, I steer clear, and I'm not going to say who, some of these mass produced places, and I get heart palpitations. I don't with yours, but I noticed certain of the cold brews is there more caffeine in the cold brew because it affects me differently than just like a regular, cup of coffee.
Yeah, generally cold brew is going to have a little bit more caffeine in it, and that's
Okay.
mainly just because the ratio of coffee to water is generally a little bit higher. So there usually people are using more coffee to make uh, uh, let's say you're trying to make a 12-ounce cup of coffee. If you're making it hot, you're going to probably use less coffee grounds than if you were making a cold brew out of that same size beverage.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I've
interesting.
had that same experience with cold brew where if I drink a full can in the afternoon, like I won't fall asleep. I try
Yeah.
not to drink coffee past noon, really, for me.
Oh, okay. Well, I drink backyard beans. I could have a pot, I mean, maybe it's just me. I could have a pot of coffee. I make a bullet like around 8 or 9 o'clock. I grind the beans, and by like 10 o'clock, I'm out. So it doesn't affect me. People think like you could drink coffee at night, but that's
Oh, at
just the
8 at
way.
night.
Oh yeah, 8 at night. I'm fine. And so, I mean, it's just
I,
the way
I yeah,
it's the way it
I
is.
wish I was
But
like that because a nice cup of coffee after dinner is like the best thing, but I
yes.
can't do it.
Oh, well, I wanted to get back to the environment and with all the changes, environmental changes. First of all, I don't know if you did mention, maybe you did, if you have traveled to these different countries to check out the beans, and also how has the environment affect the way that the beans are grown? Or we'd love to just
Yeah,
maybe give us more insight on that.
yeah, for sure. had the opportunity to travel to a couple countries. The first one was like the most awesome place to go if you're in love with coffee, which is the birthplace of coffee. In 2018, so I got to go to Ethiopia. Our
Wow.
main our main importer for Ethiopian coffees is a company based in Baltimore, and the guy who runs it is named Samuel. He's from Ethiopia, and he started his importing business over 10 years ago here in Baltimore. Forget exactly how long he's been doing it, but he's been at it for a while. And so he'll oftentimes invite his roasters who buy from him to travel with him to Ethiopia. And he invited Matt, and Matt didn't want to go. I think he had a couple little ones at home, and so he sent me and got to travel around Ethiopia. And that's where coffee, Arabica coffee, is originally from. And it's called Arabica because they actually, at first, when they first discovered it, they mistakenly thought it was from Arabia, like Yemen area. And then years later, uh, this Scottish explorer in like the 1700s, um, he traveled into Kaffa, Ethiopia, and he realized that that's where coffee was growing, and that's probably where it came from. So they did some research and realized that, oh yeah, this Arabica species of coffee is from Ethiopia. And the other species of coffee that's fairly common around the world is Robusta, and that makes up about 40% of the global coffee market. But Robusta coffee doesn't taste the same as the specialty coffee, the Arabica that we're roasting. Um, and so, yeah, to get back to your question, um, so I've been to Ethiopia. That's the birthplace of coffee. Coffee actually, like, it grows pretty naturally there in 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 like the forest in some areas. So in the region where they discovered it, um, it's just kind of growing wildly. And up to this day, there are still some areas where it's like wild coffee. But then they also have throughout Ethiopia what they would call like garden coffee, where it's been taken out of the forest, planted in gardens. There's still a lot of shade and a lot of other plants around because a lot of the farmers are growing different crops. But they call that garden coffee. And then from there, like Arabica coffee has spread throughout the world, and it needs a really specific climate to grow well. So the temperatures have to be between like 63 and 73 degrees Fahrenheit. So generally higher elevations are going to provide that the temperature that Arabica is going to thrive in. So if you look at the climate that is there in Ethiopia at these higher elevations, that's kind of the climate you're looking to have throughout the rest of the world where you're growing coffee. Um, and it's really, coffee's really susceptible to frost. Like if there's a frost, it could wipe out a crop. So coffee can't grow anywhere where it's too cold. And it also, if it's too warm, it's not going to grow very well and it's not going to taste very well. The coffee cherries will mature very quickly. Um, so when you get to like lower elevations, it's warmer. The coffee quality is not as good. Um, you can still grow it, but it's going to have the cup quality isn't going to be as good. So all that to say is like environmental factors are a thing because with global warming and like the temperatures creeping up, um, there are some areas where it's going to be more difficult to grow these specialty coffees. So a lot of work is being done to try to figure out what species, or not even what species, what varieties. So within Arabica species, you have different varieties of coffees, and a lot of scientists in all the coffee growing countries are doing work to um, make hybrids, um, make different new varieties, and testing these varieties to see what is going to stand up to warmer temperatures and what's going to taste good. And it's always this balance act of what tastes good and what can produce a lot of coffee so that farmers make money, and what's going to be a resilient crop. Um, and
Hmm.
yeah, so I've I've also been to Colombia. I got to go there last summer, and I've been to Guatemala, and it's pretty wild. Like the areas that the coffees we're buying are grown, it's like really rugged, high elevations, like mountainous areas. It takes a while to drive up these mountainsides and get to these farms, and the coffee's grown on like pretty steep slopes. It's pretty like it's a rough job for for uh for picking and just getting around to take care of these trees. Um, but yeah, most of the farmers, from what I've seen at these high elevations, like it's natural to have a lot of shade coverage, which is really good for the coffee trees, and it's good for the soil. Um, it's generally more so at lower elevations where there's going to be more like trees cut down to grow coffee, and that's where like lower quality coffee is going to be coming from.
Oh, wow. My gosh, I have so many questions. I'm thinking of like if you ever seen Expedition Unknown, where he travels all over and he finds these fascinating places. But did you guys ever film or do any coverage on your expeditions with checking out, and just overseeing what's going on and just, I guess, making connections? I guess my question is, what are the I guess the ramifications or the standards of not outsourcing, but I guess finding places, businesses to work with or
Yeah,
farms, and is it strictly fair trade? I mean, I really don't know that end. I just know I'm a coffee holic and I drink
yeah,
a lot of coffee.
yeah. For us, so I can share a couple stories that might help illustrate it. So when I went to Colombia, I was there with one of our main importers for Colombian coffees. The company is called the Coffee Quest, and Steven is our contact there. He's one of the founders. And so the way they run their operation is very specialty focused. So more of a boutique. Um, they still run a pretty large operation for exporting coffee out, but it's not as massive as some of these operations where they're just moving like tons and tons of coffee. Um, and so the way a specialty operation like that works is, and how they work is they have a number of buying stations throughout the country, and they have a staff member at each buying station, and their job is to form relationships with the farmers in that area and let these farmers know that they're there as a buyer and they have a station where they can sell their coffee at. And so in Colombia, uh, coffee farmers will pick their coffee. They'll generally hire a number of people to help with the harvest, and then the processing is done on their farm. So the coffee cherries are depulped, they're fermented, and they're washed and dried. So all that processing is done by the farmer on their farm. And then they have a dry product, which at this point we call it parchment because it's like a green coffee bean with parchment around it. And in Colombia, that's what they have to sell. So in Colombia, farmers sell their parchment to a buyer. And with the importer we work with, who I was there in Colombia with, their job is to find who these coffee farmers are, who's who has really good coffees and who wants to sell to them. The farmers will then come down to the buying station. They'll provide a sample to the buyer, and that employee at the buying station will take that sample, roast it up that day, cup it the next day, provide feedback through WhatsApp to the farmer, telling them, hey, this is what your coffee scored. This is what we can offer you. This is what today's price is. Um, and yes or no, do you want to sell it to us? And if they want to sell it to them, they'll bring it down. And so there's different tiers of quality that we're buying as a roaster, and that like a specialty boutique exporter is buying. We have a point system, and like a micro lot that's going to be really, really unique is going to go for a higher price than a good quality, clean coffee, but that doesn't have like crazy amounts of acidity or sweetness or these attributes that we're looking for. Um, and then if the buyers can also reject the coffee and say, no, like the physical attributes of this coffee don't meet our requirements. There's too much moisture content in it, or there's too many defects in it, or whatnot. Usually it's moisture content that will get it rejected, which means that the farmer needs to dry it a little bit longer before they come down and sell it.
That is so cool. That's so interesting. I mean, I'm just sitting here, like, just listening to all the steps and all the things that go into having an amazing end product.
Yeah.
Um, that's really, really cool.
And just to hit on, just to wrap up
Yeah,
what your question was too, on
yeah,
fair trade and organic, we sell a number of certified organic coffees. We also sell what we call conventional coffees. So those are coffees that aren't certified organic. Also, fair trade, our punch in the face cold brew is fair trade certified. Um, and so is our coffee bags punch in the face. We don't sell it as fair trade, but we buy the coffee with fair trade premium. But a lot of these coffees that we're buying, they have a premium attached to them that we can't market like fair trade because there's no certifying agency. But there is, when we're buying specialty coffee and these buyers are out there trying to scoop up these good coffees, they're paying more for them. So we're looking for suppliers to work with that have long lasting relationships with these coffee farmers and that have these structures set up to provide market access to coffee farmers and to be like a dependable buyer for the coffee year after year so that the farmers know we can
yeah.
build a relationship with this buyer and have a sustainable future through that.
Yeah, thank you for my gosh, that's really, really interesting. I learned a lot today. I did have another, just a quick question. So, I love when I go into an establishment that has backyard beans, that they're educated, that I can ask them questions like, is this high in acidity? Like, what is the difference? And it's really a pleasure because I think customer service sometimes is lost in translation. And it's always nice for people to really understand and know the products that they are shelving and what they're selling. But I just know, so if it's high in acidity, if it's high in acidity, it's very acidic. That has nothing to do, like, say, with espresso or something that has more caffeine or concentrated. Maybe you could just explain to everyone what is the difference.
Yeah. Okay. So acidity is a hard thing in coffee to understand because everyone kind of perceives it different. And there's different types of acidity. So somebody might drink a dark roast and think, oh, that's really, really bitter. Uh, and then somebody might drink a light roast that's really like fruity and think, oh, that's really acidic. I don't like that. So a lot of it's preference. Um, but there are some coffees that are going to taste more bitter than other coffees, and there's definitely a acidity level that's going to be different coffee to coffee. Um,
Hmm.
and a lot of it comes down to like the language we're using sometimes isn't calibrated. So when we're looking for really high quality coffees that are grown at high elevations, that have really fun and interesting like liveliness to them, a lot of times those coffees have higher acidity. Um, so coffees grown at high elevations, whether it's Ethiopia or Colombia or Guatemala, they one of the theories that seems to hold up is that these coffees take longer to mature on the tree, the coffee cherries, because they're in the shade, because they're have a cooler environment. The cherries take longer to ripen, and as they're ripening, they're absorbing more acidity in the bean and more sugars. So when we roast them, they can express themselves like, ooh, that's kind of like citrusy, or that's kind of like peachy, like these different acidities that you would experience in fruits. And then other coffees, they can taste um, they can taste bitter because of how it's roasted or because of the quality of the green coffee. So like a lower quality green coffee won't have much acidity, but when it's roasted, it might taste a little like acrid or like ashy or burnt or spicy and kind of like bitter. And that's generally those flavors that aren't going to sit well with people. Um,
Hmm.
all that to say, I always recommend people when they're looking for a lower acidity coffee um, to avoid a dark roast and to avoid a light roast. So you're kind of
Oh,
looking for something more in the middle. Our bandwidth blend and our breakfast blend are really good go-tos, and then actually family drama would be another one. So those are our three
yep.
coffees: bandwidth, breakfast, and family drama, that are going to express themselves in a more like smooth, um, less of a bite to them.
Yeah, thank you for breaking that down. And the other thing is, I would love to be a fly on the wall when you're all brainstorming, coming up with these amazing names and for your coffee blends. I think it's so cool, like Punch in the Face, and I mean, it's just like, oh, I want to try that. That sounds good.
Yeah,
And my husband loves that. So, um, yeah. So Bobby, I just want to say thank you for breaking everything down, really educating me. I just wanted to quickly ask you. So, would you be like a connoisseur of coffee, like wine, or what would you call somebody who really knows ins and outs
yeah.
of coffee?
Coffee connoisseur. You could definitely call me that. You can call other people that, or a coffee geek.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I like Coffee Geek. That's cool.
yeah.
So, is there anything else? Well, first of all, how can, if any viewers and listeners would like to try your coffee that live out of state or in another country, how can they find Backyard Beans coffee?
Yeah, backyardbeans.com. We sell and ship online. We do not ship internationally, but if you're in the United States, check us out.
Yeah,
And then
thank you.
also locally to Pennsylvania, if your local grocery store doesn't stock backyard beans, try to find an employee and ask them why not.
I like that. I just might do that. So, so again, Bobby, thank you for taking the time. And it was such a pleasure for you to be on my show because I am so passionate about drinking coffee and just everything that you explained to us and broke it down. So,
Yeah,
and for everyone,
thanks
yeah,
for letting me
yeah.
share, Leslie.
Oh, absolutely. Um, Also, now until the end of November, you can take advantage of 30% off products from Humbled Healing Company and enter Keep It Dirty promo code. Humbled Healing Company's full spectrum hemp oils are whole plant extracts that contain all compounds found naturally occurring in the hemp plant. Humbled Healing Hemp is always USDA certified organic, USA grown and produced, and chemical and pesticide free. And thank you for all my viewers and listeners supporting my podcast. And don't forget to ground with Mother Earth and keep it dirty.